r/askreddit, what movie has the best opening scene? The Godfather. I believe in America. I will say this every time. That scene is absolutely iconic. And by the time that first 10 minutes is up, you know exactly who Vito Corleone is and that he holds everybody by the balls. Inglourious Bastard. A masterclass in building tension. Au revoir, Shoshana. Came here to say this. A spellbinding and terrifying 20-minute opening scene. The Matrix. That Trinity scene really kicked things off. No, Lieutenant, your men are already dead. Super Troopers. I've seen the opening hundreds of times, and the rest of the movie maybe 5. You boys like Mexico. I don't know if it's the best opening, but it was the first one that popped into my head. He's already pulled over. He can't pull over any farther. It's been a while, so I'm not sure if it is actually the opening scene or just very early in the movie, but the storming the beach scene in Saving Private Ryan is outstanding. Scroll to find this. It's a comedic masterclass, especially out of context. Littering and Mother of God. The Lion King, it always gives me goosebumps. It was meant to be a normal opening scene explaining the story and whatnot, then Hans Zimmer took them that music and they were like, no, fuck that, we're starting with your song. Edit. Source, link. The Dark Knight bank heist scene. My first thought for sure. Casino Royale is up there. The Dark Knight was the better movie of the two, but the cold open to The Dark Knight Rises was insanely epic. A New Hope. After the title crawl, you can clearly see who the good and bad guys are. The Star Destroyer flying over seems to go on forever, and you realize right away that you don't fuck with the Empire. Then after the stormtroopers shoot up the rebels, Darth Vader makes his first ever appearance. One of the most iconic villains of all time, this intro cemented Star Wars in history. I rewatched it this morning for the first time in years just for the scene, and it prompted me to ask. Incredible. I love that part in Spaceballs just because the ship is like 5x longer than in Star Wars. Office Space. Everyone has been stuck in traffic and the old man walking past the cars, Link makes me laugh every time. That movie was a gem from start to finish, and is one of a handful that I would consider almost perfect movies. Children of Men. Almost jumped out of my seat. Oh no, I don't remember the opening. I remember quite vividly the no-cut scene, though. God, why did I have to scroll so far? I hate how no one has seen this movie. It's popular amongst movie buffs, but it was a commercial failure, and yet to me this is the most powerful film I have ever seen. The opening scene perfectly introduces the world, the protagonist, the tone, and the intensity through one shot. It's incredible. Terminator 2. So many people want an entirely future war Terminator movie based off of the opening scene of T2. Robert Patrick scared the crap out of me as a kid. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Link, it sets the tone for the film, it has more than one twist, and is just generally entertaining. It's a little slow for the first 2 minutes but worth the watch. Full Metal Jacket. You look like the kinda guy who would fuck another man in the ass and not have the common decency to give him a reach around. Is that you, John Wayne? Is this me? Did your mother have any children that lived? Contact. Starting at Earth, then panning out of the solar system, then the galaxy, then out to the edge of the universe, all while listening to older and older radio transmissions. Genius. Not the opening scene, but the mirror scene is also a masterpiece. Link. I'll stop there, but there are at least a dozen just perfect scenes in that movie. WALL-E. WALL-E is a masterpiece start to finish, but the world building they do in the opening while establishing the character and overall tone is just incredible. The first 20 minutes of WALL-E are better than any other 20 minutes Pixar has ever done. Jaws, 1975. Moonlight swimmer eaten by a shark. To this day I will stand on the beach. But I'm not going into the water. It's an incredible way to introduce a character and establish them. In the opening scene, we learn what Indiana Jones does, but we also learn that, expert though he is, he tends to scrape by and narrowly survive danger rather than being invincible. We learn he relies on a whip, we learn about his fear of snakes, etc. All with minimal dialogue or exposition. An old family friend is the person playing guitar by the beach fire. 28 weeks later. Watched this with my wife and she turned to me and asked me, if that happened, would you leave me like that? I said, you bet your ass I would. Fellas, don't be like me unless you're cool with sleeping on the couch. ITLL never happened, so just say of course I'd die with you babe. It's so good it could be a standalone short film. Best part of the sequel by a mile. Once Upon a Time in the West. Tropic Thunder. Yes. Seeing those trailers for the first time had me fucking dying. Up, first 10 minutes. My daughter recommended Up to me, so I watched it on a plane. I was crying into my beard after 5 minutes. I then sat between these two strangers for another 8 hours. The opening sequence of Up has its own Wikipedia article, link. Goodfellas. Brutally shooting and stabbing the guy in the trunk and then smash cutting to the gangster monologue perfectly sets the tone of the film. Raising Arizona is pretty great. When there was no meat, we ate fowl, and when there was no fowl, we ate crawdad, and when there was no crawdad to be found, we ate sand. Turn to the Rahid. Those were the salad days. Watchmen with the death of the comedian. Honestly, you can argue it's actually Watchmen with the times they are a change in montage. Scream. When the star of the movie is murdered, epic. X-Men. Magneto twisting the gate in Auschwitz when he gets separated from his parents has always stood out to me. My nostalgia vote was going to be X-Men 2. It doesn't have the emotional weight or character development of the X-Men opening, and it's admittedly been topped since, but in 2003 it was the great superhero movie action sequence that I had seen. For as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. Cue music. It was so fucking cool because you know who he becomes. And you almost want him to win. Apocalypse Now. I've been a fan of The Doors ever since I first saw that opening scene. Blade. Pulp Fiction. I Love You, Honey Bunny. The Fellowship of the Ring. The openings of all three films are incredible. Something about The Two Towers grips me the most though. The way the soundtrack builds over the misty mountains before Gandalf battles the Balrog while falling down the chasm. Amazing. Here it is. Link. But there were some who resisted. Sets the tone for all three movies too. Facing nearly impossible odds but fought anyway. The world has changed, I can feel it in the water. Raiders of the Lost Ark. The whip, the idol, the boulder, the engine, and the theme song. It's perfect. There's two intros to FOTR. The serious one then the light one concerning hobbits. The birdcage starts over the ocean and pans right into the club to the stage. If we're counting the first thing the audience sees, the opening credits to Lord of War tells its own story in a low-key horrifying way. Link. That intro was brilliant, I had to browse too far for this answer. Dread 2012. America is an irradiated wasteland. Super Troopers. The whole movie is great, but the entire first scene is one of the funniest parts of any movie. He's already pulled over, he can't pull over any farther. That's one of my favorite lines in any movie ever. The desperation in his voice, chef's kiss. Shrek. Somebody. Come on, show a little backbone, will ya? As they plane narrowly escapes. The perfect opening. Gladiator. At my signal, unleash hell. GoldenEye. Opening scenes of any Bond movie are often amazing. Love this Bond opening. My favorite is Casino Royale. It just threw the audience into the new Bond. It wasn't just a new actor but an entirely new style. Ghost Ship. Ha. Came to say this. First scene is great, then you can basically turn it off. Star Wars. Especially if you saw it on the big screen in 1977. Baby Driver. Link. Bell Bottoms. The second scene, Coffee Run, is pretty good too.